So we're going to hand out an assessment for y'all to give to yourself, and you are going to want to take out your cell phone because you are going to have to divide by 13. So it helps. So you're going to add up your score, divide by 13, and then I'll tell you what it all means. Okay, so we're going to move along. Hopefully y'all have had a chance to calculate your score. So what this is actually a personality trait that gets at how you make decisions. And I'll explain to you in some detail, but just so that way you know what your score means. If you are a 3.99 or less, you are what we call a satisficer. I am also a satisficer. If you are a 4.0 or higher, you are a maximizer, and that would mean that you are like Jeff. So the two of us have teamed up. It is a dimension, and so as you move more towards that middle ground, there may be some things that start to bleed over. You may show, like if you're a 3.99, you may have some traits that resemble a maximizer. But as you get more to the extremes, the satisficer or maximizer traits will become more readily apparent. And so the quick breakdown of this is that in terms of making decisions, satisficers are very, very fast, and maximizers are very slow. And it comes down to that with a satisficer, you are internally driven. You make a decision about sort of what is good enough, a threshold of what you're looking for, and then when you find it, boom, you're done. You've made your decision. A maximizer is externally driven. They're the people who will spend a lot of time researching, especially they're interested in external opinions. And so, they'll actually run forever doing research and change their mind multiple times and usually not make a final decision until there's actually a deadline. The second thing is optimization. I will say that most things, thankfully, as a satisficer, most things do not need to actually be researched at this level. And so most of the time, my and other satisficers' decisions are just fine. But we are not the ones who get optimal results. Maximizers do actually make better decisions. The last thing is regret. And I'm going to give you some stories to illustrate in a second. But the last thing is regret. A satisficer makes their decision and never looks back and is happy as can be. While a maximizer, the second they make their decision, they regret it. He does, however, just like I said, maximizers, he does make better decisions. So one of Jeff's quirks is actually hotels as well. And to the point where we've been to Torrey Pines in San Diego or La Jolla, and the people at the front desk, they got so sick of Jeff taking room keys and coming back and saying it wasn't good enough. He did it very nicely, but basically that's what he was doing. And by the way, we paid the lowest rate. That they finally took out a map, marked all the hotel rooms that were available, gave him a master key and said, "Make a decision, sir." And I sat with my Kindle in the sun like a cat and with all the luggage for an hour, waiting for Jeff to go through, make his decision. He came back to get me. We went into the room. He's so excited. He's like, "Look at this, it's 2 balconies." And he's like, "Shh," pulling back the curtains. And he's like, "There's 1 balcony." And he's like, "Shh, there's another balcony." And I'm like, "This is great." And I look over at him, and his whole face is fine. I'm like, "What is your problem?" And he goes, "I should have chosen the other room." I'm done picking on you. You're free. Now, I fully admit that my life is better, and this is one of the lessons for leadership, because Jeff is a maximizer and I'm a satisficer. Because without Jeff, I would have never known that you could have late checkout at a hotel because I would have never asked. I would have never dug up that information. I would have never known that you could pay a rate and then try to actually move up from that rate without paying for it. I would have never known that. I would have never known that certain hotels will actually let you hang out and then shower in one of their rooms at the end of the day. These things never existed in my life, and without Jeff, I would have never found them out. So really and truly, the information search, it really does make for optimal decision making, but not everything needs to be optimized. And so one of the key learning lessons in terms of leading yourself is sometimes, because you're not going to fight your personality, sometimes it's really helpful to pair up with somebody who's the opposite, or at least have somebody you work closely with who is the opposite. Because Jeff will find the information, but he will have, and I'm saying Jeff, I also mean all maximizers, he'll have a hard time actually stopping the search and just making a decision. Where you give me that information and I will have you a decision. And so the first thing to learn is put your opposite near you, somebody who you're going to trust, and then if you're a maximizer, triage whether or not the decision is important in terms of financial and or you're passionate about it. And for everything else, hand it to your Satisficer. If it's something that doesn't actually need an optimal decision, hand it to your Satisficer. If it's something that you aren't fully passionate about, hand it to your Satisficer, and we'll get it done. The other thing is that there are some ways in which you can sort of, whether you're Satisficer or Maximizer, sort of medicate yourself, like, not like on drugs, but in terms of like some habits. The first thing is that Maximizers, they need deadlines. And they need to be deadlines that are not imposed internally, because otherwise they'll just move the deadline. So they'll make a decision as long as there's a deadline that's actually enforced. And so that can be a handy way to actually get a decision out of a Maximizer. For a Satisficer, bring them in or give them the responsibility after the search phase is over. Just switch off a little bit on the responsibility, where when you're trying to do some maybe team decision making, let the Maximizer be at the initial phases and pull out the information. I'm constantly amazed. Jeff and I sometimes do like group calls. I'm constantly amazed at how many questions come out of his head. And I'm like, how in the world do you do that? And it is just his Maximizer personality. But at some point you want to let or the Satisficer, you want to let the Satisficer take over and actually make the decision and make the action happen. And so you can kind of switch back and forth this way, realizing your own strengths in terms of being a Maximizer or a Satisficer, and then using somebody else who you trust to be that counterpoint to you. And then you get the benefit of sort of both worlds, because both are handy. It's handy in business to make a fast decision, because that's what you're doing, especially at the top of organizations. You're working in such a complex environment that you'll never have all the information, and you just need to sometimes make a decision and try it out. And so you want to be able to mix the two types together in your leadership styles.